Welcome to Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 172. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live call-in show for computer repair techs. The call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. Computer Repair Podcast is brought to you by FreshBooks, the simple, pain-free invoicing solution for freelancers and small business owners. Try it free at freshbooks.com/podnuts. And by Pulse Printing and Promotions. Get help with all your print and promotional needs. Go to pulseprintpromo.com. Use the offer code PODNUTS for a 5% discount on every order. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have Chris Carruthers from the Remote Support Tech team. How you doing, Chris?
To be honest, my arm's a little sore from all the snow shoveling that I've been doing this week. I don't know about you down there, but it's been pretty crazy.
I just let it melt.
Yeah.
Also joining us, we have from Sunnyvale, Florida, Marvin Bee from MB Systems. How you doing, Marvin?
Sunnyvale. That's Van City for you, man. We had to turn on the AC again today.
Oh,
sorry.
I feel so bad for you, Marvin.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
I mean,
Also joining us today, we have Chad Kempt from Fast Computers. How you doing, Chad?
Doing good. How about you?
I am doing excellent. All right. Chris, why don't you go ahead and start off, because I don't want to lose you before we get any good stories out of you.
Okay.
Go ahead and share one tip or story with us that we could learn from.
Don't let the cable company put a temporary line down because it'll stay above ground in a blizzard. That's where all my internet problems have been coming from. Big tip, really, and I know I keep on hammering on this, and it's going to keep on coming up over and over and over, but this is my life right now. And really, it's reminding your clients that they need to make a backup.
Ugh.
I have now had 4 separate clients in the last week that could have been 1,000% better off if they had a backup. One of them still is using POP for email. I didn't know that. So when their QuickBooks file, or not QuickBooks, when their Outlook PSD files became corrupt, that's going to be a fun attempt at recovering. Backup could have fixed that. Crypto locker customer, backup could have fixed that. So yeah, get your customers on backups, even if it's not going to be one that's managed or anything from you, because you don't want to be the one giving them the bad news at the end of the week.
Absolutely. Oh, sad story, but
yeah.
True. All right. Mr. Marvin B., what do you have to share with us this week?
Oh, I have a lot. I'll actually save the original story I was going to give for our network security segment coming up.
Gotcha.
But I will say another story is for customers that think that they have all of their network information, all of their passwords. It's a good thing if you double check for them and make sure they know. I had a customer that changed internet providers and found out that their website wasn't hosted where they thought it was hosted. And so when they got the service canceled from the previous provider, they lost their website, they lost their email, and we had to get all of that turned back on, and it has taken 1 month to actually get them moved over to a new registrar, a new host, and to get them in control of their own DNS.
What?
Ugh.
So don't take your customer's word that they have everything. Double check.
Right. And I'll say this, is that for all of us that are providing support, just provide that stuff for your clients. I mean, if you suck that bad at your job and they want to get rid of you, just deal with it. Anyways, rant ended.
Well, just to say, that wasn't even a tech's fault. That was actually the provider's fault.
So they were provided with. So how were you able to get the passwords and stuff back? You actually had to go to the provider?
Well, what we did was the provider was actually the one that was hosting their website and managing their DNS control panel.
Okay.
So basically, we got them to turn everything back on so that we could, request a transfer, so that the customer could actually be the ones that owned their own domain at their own registrar, and then we switched everything over to their name servers, and then we got control of everything from that point.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. That sucks. All right, Chad, what do you have to share with us this week?
We got tons of stuff going on. Probably spend all day telling you about it all, but a couple of exciting things, I guess. I'll touch on one thing Chris mentioned about backups. I have one home office user that has a file server, just a file server, nothing else, not even a domain controller. And they basically, his wife got hit with Crypto Locker, Crypto Wall, Crypto whatever. It was the MP3 one, the new one.
Right.
And anyway, it took me 10 minutes to restore all the files back to the server.
Woo!
Yeah. So
Nice.
the computer, on the other hand, a little longer. That came in the shop, and one of my techs was doing that. But the files, the things that actually matter, 10 minutes. Just deleted the shares, all the files on the shares, copied them back off the Dotto about 30 minutes before the infection, and that was it, done. So that's what happens when you have things in place and they're working well. And then I tell everyone who isn't doing things properly that that's what happens to them, and that's what they could be if they would have listened. That's kind of the thing.
Right.
Couple Office 365 migrations, same old there. One server we're deploying at the end of this month, kind of exciting. It's the first time we're doing all flash. So it's it's got 8 480 gig SSDs in RAID 6 as the VM drive. We've done SSD caching, we've done tiered. This is the first time where there is no rotational drives in this server at all, and that's 3 terabytes usable roughly. So
That's
Nice.
actually a little exciting.
that is exciting. Yeah, that. I don't get excited about hardware much anymore. I mean, it's just a SAN here, a SAN there, server here, server there. I mean, but you get something once in a while. For me, this was kind of neat.
Oh, I get excited about my hardware. But anyways, that's a whole different story.
No comment.
So now, from a server, now this is for a virtual server, you said?
Oh, actually, I should add on to that. Yeah. So basically, the server's going to have 4 VMs. I mean, I can get into the whole architecture on it, but basically, the server's a Lenovo TD350. It's a tower server, so it has 2 240 gig SSDs in RAID 1, and that's going to be the Hyper-V host, and then it's got 8 480 gig SSDs in RAID 6. That's going to hold the VMs. There's 4 VMs, Active Directory, a SQL server. Top of my head, what are they now? Like the one's an accounting line of business server, and then the other one is a licensing server, SolidWorks and all that kind of stuff. They have a licensing plan. Some things that are exciting about this deployment, the network we're doing all 10 gig, so we're using a Cisco XG 350, 48 port, 10 gig base T. Switch, Cat 6A. So we have some length problems, so we couldn't use typical cables you'd use in like a rack. It's just the way this building is. So we needed to do Cat 6A. So we're having the whole building done with Cat 6A. And the highest end workstations we're doing are Lenovo P900s. So anyone that sells Lenovo and knows about ThinkStations, these are basically, they're almost servers, but they're desktops. We're putting M5000 Quadros in them, 64 gigs of RAM, 512 gig SSD, and 2, what are they now? I think they're either the 8 or the 10 core. It's either the 2640 or the 2667. 2 of them anyway. So those are going to be some pretty nice workstations. So this kind of hardware is fun, I'll be honest. It's
Now, what are they using them for?
it's a aerospace engineering firm, so it's all going to be running like SolidWorks, doing flow modeling and stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. So it definitely needs the processing power, RAM, all that kind of stuff.
They don't like waiting either, so that that's the whole thing. So accessing the files off the server, there is basically the time is money. These people are all very well paid engineers, and so if they can save 4 seconds a day over a period of time, it adds up. So I have now taken out every single bottleneck they could possibly have.
Nice. And I'll tell you, from my standpoint, doing the simple basic things that I do, like audio editing and things like that, on my old workstation, I basically had I had a Core i7, 3.6 gigahertz, 32 gigs of RAM, nice video card, 780 GTX, all that, and it would take me, for an hour podcast, to mix it down, it took me about 17 minutes, depending on the length, a little bit here, a little bit there. And it takes out the audio, the audio lows and all that kind of stuff. And on my new system, which I built, another Core i7, but it's 6 cores instead of the 4, still 32 gigs of RAM because, quite honestly, I never used the 32 gigs that I had in my other system. In a 980 GTX, I basically went down to 3 minutes and 30 seconds for that same audio file.
Yeah,
the
Xeons, the difference in the Xeons and even the i7s, you'd be amazed. I was just pulling the quote out here. I got the PO. I was going to tell you guys You can keep talking. I'll tell you the processor in a second.
Well, I'm going to say for the virtual servers, are you having SSDs in there? Obviously, are you going to get some? You're going to get basically faster throughput.
IOPS.
Could be a lot.
We don't care about with VMs. You don't well generally these are all generally speaking, right? There's disclaimers. Right. So generally speaking, we don't care about like it can copy at 5 gigabytes a second.
Right.
We care about how quickly we can randomly access that data because we have a lot of stuff happening all at the same time, and there's no seek times. And with the bigger the array gets, the faster it gets. I just looked it up. They're 2667s, so those are 8-core processors, 3.2 gigahertz. But the thing with the Xeons is that's 20 meg cache. So there's 20 meg cache, and there's 2 of those in each of those P900s. So
gotcha.
16 physical cores, 32 logical cores.
Gotcha.
Very exciting.
Very cool.
Memory, all that stuff,
All the fun stuff. All right. Well, let's take a quick break, and we'll get into our emails with all those stories being shared. I don't really have anything too exciting to share. Other than my build and the different getting it back in line so it works for the things I do on a weekly basis. That's always fun. But I don't want to bore you guys with that. So our show today is brought to you by FreshBooks. It is a simple cloud accounting solution designed for small business owners to painlessly send invoices, track time, and capture expenses. Save time for most computer repair shops. It's a very thing that seems to be in short supply all the time, right? Tons to do and never enough time to get it all done. The good news is our friends over at FreshBooks feel your pain and have created something to help you reclaim some of your precious time and be more productive. FreshBooks has created an amazingly simple invoicing solution for small business owners who need to focus on their work, not their paperwork. Oh, and the invoicing is only the beginning. FreshBooks keeps all your cash flow details in one place so you know exactly what invoices you sent, when you sent them, who's paid you, and who owes you what. Their mobile app lets you take pictures of your receipts and organizes them for later, which makes claiming expenses at tax time a breeze. It only takes about 30 seconds to create a really professional-looking invoice. FreshBooks can even show you whether or not a client has looked at the invoice you've emailed. You can also call their helpful support line, and you'll get to speak to a human right away. No phone trees, no annoying pre-recorded messages. The best part is FreshBooks will definitely streamline how you manage this stuff on a day-to-day basis. But you'll also find that as tax time comes, you'll be so much more prepared and way less stressed. FreshBooks is offering you a free 30-day trial to try it out with no credit card required. Go to freshbooks.com/podnuts and enter Podnutz in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Yep, definitely check out FreshBooks. They are a new sponsor of the show, and we're excited to have them on board. They did a walkthrough with me in about 15 minutes, and it was phenomenal, the things that you could do in a short period of time. If you need to invoice, if you need to make sure you got all your ducks in a row, definitely check them out. 30 days free, no credit card. Go over there and let them know that you heard about them on Podnutz. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our emails. All right, this is from Michael. I don't want to mess his last name up, but Shalke. We'll attempt. Okay, so anyways, another Californian. Says, hi guys, love the show, been listening for about 2 years now, great information. About show 165 and discussion about cloning. My boss bought Paragon Hard Disk Manager Suite 15, which we use in our shop. Perhaps it gets around the copyright issues by saying it migrates the OS from a larger drive to a smaller drive. Almost every computer that comes in for a repair, we recommend an SSD. So this is a software that is used many times a day. Most drives take under 15 minutes. With damaged drives, it prompts to repair it first and then will clone. That's very interesting. The version 12 from Paragon does partition backups, which we do not only for our clients, but fresh builds of new computers that we custom build. Each gigabyte motherboard we sell has an image of Windows 7 Home and Pro, 10 Home and Pro, pre-licensed, with all the Windows updates waiting to be blown onto the SSD of our choice. That's very convenient. It also comes with software to make a bootable CD of Linux so we can clone using a customer's own machine if we need to, or we want to do more than one clone at a time. For sanitizing, most clients don't want the drives back, so we just use Derek's boot and nuke on a machine way in a corner, usually before we go home at night. Keep up the good work, and that's from Michael Shalke. Michael, appreciate the email, and that's very interesting. What we were talking about on that show, I believe, is we were talking about can you go from a larger drive to a smaller drive? You remember that, Martin, talking about that?
Martin's
Or
not here.
Marvin. Marvin.
Yeah.
Martin was supposed to be here, but he's not.
That's true. Yeah, we were talking about the different equipment, and I think I was talking about the hardware-based copy and sanitation tools that I have.
Right.
But the software-based partition tools like the Aomi Partition Assistant, Paragon, Asus has one where they will allow you to software go from a larger to a smaller drive.
Gotcha. Just not on the hardware on what we were talking about, right?
Well, not the ones that we can afford. I mean, they do have some, but you're talking, $5 to $10 grand for those machines, and most of us won't be doing that type of copying.
Right. A lot of times people are moving from a smaller drive to a larger drive. Most of the time they're not moving from a larger drive to a smaller drive. But I think where it comes into play is the SSDs. That's where people are having a problem, because a lot of times you're going from a terabyte hard drive, spinning drive, down to a 500 gig or 250 gig SSD, because most people, even on the machines I look at nowadays, especially for residential, well, even probably for a lot of businesses too, there's usually less than 100 gigs on any given machine, as far as like the operating system and programs and stuff like that. Now some, and there are quite a few that do this, but when they're storing music and different things on there, then it gets up into a large amount. But very interesting. All right, cool. All right, and the next two emails are kind of go into our main subject, and we're going to talk about that. And this is there was a Ars Technica article about the hospital that paid $17,000 for the ransomware crypto key to get all their stuff back on their servers and their workstations to get that hospital up and running. We'll definitely have a link for that in the show notes. You guys can go check it out and read it over there. It's been on many podcasts over the last couple of weeks. People have talked about it. I think they had to get something like 40 bitcoins, which equals to about $17,000 at this point. Yeah. So, and this is from Brandon. He says, I wish you guys would discuss this on the show. Thoughts, opinions, how it should have been prevented, etc. And we kind of answered that a little bit in the beginning, and really the only way you can prevent this stuff 100% is by having some sort of good backup in place. But yeah, we'll definitely get into that when we talk about our subject of network security. All right, third email. This is from Chris Webb. It says, hi, Jeff. Last week I had an email discussion with Marvin about one of my business clients. Marvin, you probably remember this. To make a long story short, a vendor wanted their own private network for their system. I didn't agree with their method, but I went with it because it seems the owner has more faith in them. After I spent months correcting the last IT individual cause, the plan was for me to meet with this vendor after the ISP had come in and set up the new modem and finished configuring the network. Today, I get a panic phone call from the business owner. The vendor came in this morning and changed out all my networking equipment with their own. Their reasoning was my equipment was not suitable for what they wanted to do. They tested their system and left. They never bothered with my client's side of the network, nor did anyone think to call me about this. I show up on site to find all the equipment I had in place. My sonic wall and everything else was thrown into a box. Oh, gosh. At this point, I was done with this client. I informed them I can't touch the vendor's equipment and they should find someone else to handle their network. I gave them the number of another individual and left. I know this was a long email, but I wanted you to know the backstory. I thought a Podnutz episode on dealing with these types of vendors might make for a good show. And this is from Chris Webb. Thank you for the email, Chris. Appreciate
Can we
that.
get a slow clap for that?
Hey, actually, well, we actually dealt with that before. We had a vendor where we showed up and they took out our Cisco routers. This is back when we were all Cisco shop, and they put in these. Remember those little Linksys boxes you could flash with like open tomato,
Right.
And that's what they had replaced our. And I'm not talking. This isn't Cisco small business, like Cisco, real Cisco.
Right.
And we showed up, and then I had a 10-minute conversation with the general manager, and then that company was fired. That
was it.
That was yeah. We brought
End of story. Yeah, I mean, there's only so many things you can do. So, yeah, it's a bummer. So let's go ahead and get into the subject. And I left a lot of time for this because I think we can go in many different directions. But the main topic for today is going to be network security. And kind of something that both these emails have hit on is how how can we keep our networks, our customers' networks secure, especially when we're talking about business side, but especially when we're talking about HIPAA compliance and all these other different compliances that you have to have in order for these businesses to operate, or should have. I would venture to say, I don't know this, but from the hearing or the hearsay that I hear in the industry is that most places of business are actually not compliant by any standards. So it's our job to come in and get them to the point, not only to educate them, but to help them understand why they need to be compliant. Not just wait for that time when somebody comes in and says, hey, this is not compliant, and they get fined, but to be able to prevent that ahead of time. Now we run into this age-old problem where nobody wants to spend money until they absolutely need to. And the same thing too, where how do you support networks? And I know, Marvin, you've gone through this where there's companies that they want to use another company for doing part of it, and then they're going to use you for doing another part of their network. And kind of similar to this email is that situation doesn't work out. Or even like you said, Chad, where people are basically, they're taking that stuff and just going, you know what, we're going to use this stuff instead, this home router, whatever, instead of these, professional routers. I think it's hard for me to fathom, because I would come into a place of business like that and I would look at what somebody did. You took out these big, robust pieces of machinery and replaced them with these little chintzy things, and you're going to think that that's okay?
Well, here's what happens, and I've one of my stories is essentially that, where a customer of mine, and I'm sure I shared this on one of the shows, I just don't remember which one, but about 4 years ago, after I had upgraded their network and got them on, nice router, business server, all of that stuff, this tenant or this client was sharing space with another attorney who wasn't a part of the network but wanted to use their physical infrastructure. They had their own tech. And at some point, they were going to move into a new space, and they wanted to combine the businesses, but they only wanted to use one of us. Or I think something happened where they wanted to use us both if I would work with the other tech, and I said, not a chance. And because I told them, said, you really only need one network administrator. You should only have one, and their network wasn't that big. We're talking, 10 people and a server. And so they went with the other tech because it was cheaper. So fast forward to a few months ago where they call me back and ask me if I would, come back and work with them, because they realize that he's over his head. And part of the problem is he did not know networking. And I don't know if it was that, it was his choice not to know, or if he just never got.
Well, it's one of those things that, yeah, Marvin got frozen there. Hopefully he'll be back in a sec. Good old Comcast. Not that we're doing any name dropping or anything like that.
Yeah, no, of course not. He is right, though. I mean, it's very difficult to work with other technicians. And I know this doesn't quite go into HIPAA because, veterinary clinics don't really follow the same laws. And PIPEDA is actually a bit different than HIPAA when you're looking at Canada between the U.S. But I have a veterinary client, and I'm very limited on what I can do with them because the software that they use for their clinic software is handled by a company that has exclusive rights over the support of it, down to the point where all the computers that they have to buy have to be bought through this company, and it comes preloaded with all of the software. So, I mean, when you wind up mixing IT companies like that, they don't really have a choice because they'll only handle their own software. But when I wind up with an issue where I'm getting Windows Genuine Advantage popping up saying that the operating system is not valid, my hands are completely tied on what I can do, and they have to go to their vendor for a fix. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough because a lot of these companies, they don't really know what it is they need, and they're looking at the situation. I don't think any company really should, I mean, any vendor should tie anybody's hands like that and go, you got to use this equipment, because here's what happens. Everybody gets into this blame game, right? Where,
Yeah.
and we run into this even up from a personal residential level. When I run my own modem, because I refuse to run Comcast modem, and when something's going wrong with the network, the first thing they're going to look at, they go, oh, no, it's your modem.
Yeah, because they don't want it to be their fault.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right.
But no, here's the thing, though. So there's a couple of things that we're talking about here. One, when you're talking about things like that veterinarian and the software they're using, if you're in there as the IT consultant, you could be consulting initially when they're bringing in these line of business vendors, and you say, well, this one obviously isn't going to work very well. We're going to have problems down the road. And if they say they want to go with them anyway for whatever reason, then you can either try to make it work, and there's obviously going to be extra costs to dealing with you on that because it's a headache, or you're going to have to part ways. When we flip around to what you were just saying there, Jeff, what was the last thing you were saying with regards to the blame game with your cable modem, right?
Yeah.
Up here they don't let you switch if you're with Rogers or with Cogeco or like the main. You can't use anything but their modem. It's locked to their MAC address. So what you do with those though is the really easy thing is you take your we have this laptop, we designate the router configuration device. My one tech won't let me replace it, and it's about 6 years old now. And he doesn't usually use his laptop. He works on a desktop, but anyway. So you take your router configuration device, you unplug the router, firewall, whatever you've got sitting there, you plug directly into it, you assign your IP statically if that's what it is, or you grab it DHCP, and you do all the troubleshooting right on that device, and then you prove the problem is there. You just take your stuff out of the equation, and that's just about being able to troubleshoot quickly and effectively. So if you're having a problem with your house, okay, sure, no problem, Mr. Comcast, you said. Unplug your. Here we go. I've got one computer hooked in. What would you like me to test? Look, I'm getting 4,000 millisecond ping replies to Google.
Right.
Clearly, we have a problem.
Exactly.
Well, and yes and no. Sometimes it doesn't really wind up working like that, and I wind up getting myself into the situation quite often. So I have another one. Point of sales. Now I have plenty of point of sales software setups that I can set people up with without needing to involve third-party vendors. I have clinic software that I can involve people with, but I'm not going to get into that because, this is just crazy. So I get called into this restaurant here in Barrie, and it's a chain restaurant. They have three locations now in town, and they're using this point-of-sales software that handles the seating assignments and ticket printings and everything for the kitchen and all of that, which is fairly standard. This is what I expect to see when I go into a place like this. Except that the actual software engineers, the company that makes the software, what they do is they pick a tech firm to deal with the entire area. The tech firm that they chose for this area is in Toronto, which is, as you know, about an hour away from here. So,
I bet you I know which software you're talking about too.
I bet you probably do.
We just had somebody get rid of that exact software for that exact reason, and I told them, sorry, can't support you.
Because there was a 4-day turnaround time on returning a phone call, let alone setting up an appointment, right?
And then they're double paying too. Then they're going to pay you to deal with them, and so they're still paying them. It's stupid.
So we go in because tickets aren't printing in the kitchen. That was the problem.
Okay.
Or should be a really simple solution, right? Might be the ticket printer, might not be. Let's go have a look. So I determined it couldn't be the printer because the printer is working fine. It's not the network because the network is pushing the data through. So you wind up spending an hour on site, right? And we charge $129 an hour. So that's $140 something after tax that these guys have paid me to come out there, diagnose the problem, and say, hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with anything here. It must be the software. You're going to have to call that company. And the immediate groan that comes from the client. But then you sit down and say, okay, listen, all of your employees hate this software. And I don't use the word hate lightly. You don't like dealing with this because you don't like the fact that your manager keeps complaining about how hard it is to get these people out there because it's a 2 to 3 week wait. And you're losing money. You're paying this much money a year for this license. So you know what? Why don't we move over to a new solution? You spend 4 hours preparing and then demonstrating a custom-tailored solution for them to decline it and say, oh, well, we've been using these guys for years, so why would we switch now? and that is
Not a client.
absolute.
That's what that is, Chris.
Yeah.
That's not a client. If you would have asked
Exactly.
me in 2006 what my target vertical was, I would have told you we did dental offices. Did we do things other than dental offices? Absolutely.
Sure.
For whatever reason, I can't tell you why, I had 90% of my client base was dental offices. We had tons of them. AbleDent, Dentrix, this, that, everything. We were great with all the software. Then something happened in the industry. And two things happened. One, companies like AbleDent decided that they could provide support just fine to their clients end to end, whereas originally they didn't want to do that. They only wanted to support the software, and they wanted to work with IT companies to do the hardware and OS support. The second thing that ended up happened later, and that was the digital, digital imaging stuff. You know, like the intraoral cameras and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Those guys started coming in, and they started giving away computers. They were like, hey, buy our $500,000 equipment you need here, and we'll just throw in computers. So there was some underhanded sales tactics we dealt with and things like that. It basically got to the point where now I do not have a single dental office under managed service contract. I have a couple that we do some offsite backups for. I have a couple where if they call because they want this one-off thing, we'll do a break-fix project. But we do not solicit them. We do not try to get them. I just know that entire vertical is just not good. It's a waste of my time. So
and that's exactly it. And that's what the restaurant industry is starting to turn into in this area, which is a whole separate show.
Those guys out of Vancouver, that hosted solution, Halo. That's what everyone seems to be going on, and that pretty much cuts you out of the picture too. No, and we have a couple restaurants that have old software, and if it comes down to supplying them with some Epson printers, or we even sell them paper like the thermal rolls and stuff like that, I got no problem with that. But the key thing here, I think the key takeaway from this conversation is to know when to draw the line. Like, don't throw good money and good time after bad. If the client isn't a fit for whatever reason, and we've just named a bunch of them, move on. Spend that effort and time on clients that are a good fit.
Absolutely, and those to that take, by the way, 8 months. I haven't taken any work from them in 8 months for this reason. So yeah, no, I'm not saying keep these people as clients. I'm saying that if you are being painted into a corner where you need to work with another IT firm, and I don't mean because you have a great relationship with them. It's not like there aren't IT firms here in town that I don't do work with. But I mean, if you are in a position where you were expected to be the first level contact for the IT for whatever company, and there is hardware that you can't touch, software that you can't touch, and it gets to the point where it's going to impede you in doing your job, that's not a good client, in my opinion.
No, if you get painted into the corner, you bring paint stripper. That's what you do.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. Get rid of the software. Switch someone to something that you can support.
You heard it here first.
Liberally apply it. Okay.
I don't mind calling into it on my client's behalf if I can't figure out something with their QuickBooks, but there's nothing stopping me from troubleshooting their QuickBooks.
QuickBooks is a beautiful example, though. So
Absolutely.
We're pro advisors. We get escalated support with QuickBooks. We know how to do all the level 1, level 2 stuff. We end up engaging QuickBooks when we have some crazy, file corruption or something like that, and it's a new client and they weren't prepared, so that's why we're there.
Right.
That kind of thing, right? No, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, we pay our annual dues. We get a hold of all the software, all the backup.
But those companies that don't want to deal with you, basically it comes down to one of two things. Either the client can say they want to deal with you all they want, but they have to choose. Either they're going to deal with that vendor, which has pretty much excluded you, or if they in full disclosure, we have a couple clients that don't care what it costs, and they will literally pay my guy to sit there and yell at insert other vendor here. And I'm very clear, like, this is not necessarily a good use of resources. And they're like, nah, we use this thing for XYZ reasons, and we don't want to deal with them. We just want the product. So I guess it's like buying a car at a dealership and then not liking that dealership, so you always bring it to another one. And even if they have to go get parts, you buy a Ford, you have to get Ford parts, right? So you bring it to Chevy, they're going to have to call Ford and get the parts, but at least you don't have to talk to them.
Yeah,
that's good. So Marvin, what were you saying before you dropped off?
Well, I was just talking from a security standpoint in terms of another tech that they wanted to use because he was cheaper, who ripped out all of the good stuff to put in cheaper stuff that he knew how to support. But he basically took away all of their protection, all of their networking stuff that I had put together, and just opening them up to so many different things. And I believe where I was going to go with that was in terms of network security, where we've got two sides coming at us. We've got the techs that are doing a poor job, who are saying that they can support our customers and give them the protection that they want, but they're not doing it. And then we've got, I'm assuming what you guys are talking about, where customers are choosing not to listen to us but listen to other vendors because those vendors are saying that they can do that. And a lot of times what I'm dealing with now is vendors that may do a piece of it, but they're not going to support the rest of their network. So we've got two sides of network security, at least that I'm looking at, that we've got to bridge that gap.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's we had kind of, after you dropped off, we were basically talking about how sometimes you deal with or don't deal with certain customers because of the vendors that they're using, and they're exclusively using their product, whether it be hardware, software, and just kind of walking away from that. So let's move into a little bit different area. Let's talk a little bit more about the network security side, where Marvin had started off with. And basically, we looked at a couple of different examples. You had a hospital that lost or was locked out of basically all their files in their hospital system, whether it be server, workstations, whatever. And I didn't get a chance to read the whole article, but basically looking at that, they had to pay, their choice was, we need to get back operating, so we're going to pay the $17,000 for the crypto virus to get the key to unlock it. And apparently that worked for them. And they had many, it sounded like many different tech companies, or IT consultants, or whomever, people that were there, people that were coming in from the outside, they were trying to basically solve this problem, see where it came in from, and a lot of that kind of stuff. But what are some of the things that we can do to protect our customers from things like the crypto virus, or even just things flaking out, not working? I mean, let's be honest. If you're in any type of retail business and you have a POS system, the worst case scenario is the POS goes down and you go back to pen and paper, and then somebody is going to spend a whole lot of time, and the owner is going to spend a whole lot of money paying that person to put the stuff in afterwards. But what are some of the things that we can do to set people up so that they don't have these problems, even when they are part of the problem? It may be from a knowledge standpoint where they don't know what they need, we're telling them what they need, and somebody else is telling them something different. Oh, you don't need that. You can use this, and this will work for you.
That is going to be the problem, because they are able to get much more information than they were ever able to get 10 years ago. So, we can go in and give them a solution, and they're going to turn around and Google a solution, and then they'll come back and say, well, what about this? So part of it's we've got to get a little bit more knowledgeable ourselves. And as a community, we've got to be able to draw the line and say, there is a level of service that we're going to provide based on, what we know is really going to protect them. And, in terms of stuff like HIPAA, if it's a medical office and they want to be HIPAA compliant, they've got to take all the steps regardless of whether it's you or somebody else. And the position that I've put myself in is I tell them I will not sign off on anything that I am responsible for unless there is a minimum level of acceptance, meaning they have to do, A, B, C, D. I may prefer that they do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but there's got to be a minimum level that they will do in order for me to support them. And then you've got to be willing to walk away, because the bottom line is the next step in the line of, fines and, stuff like that is going to be us. We're the ones that are going to be sued when a customer goes, well, you told us we were protected.
Right. I think there's a couple problems that we're dealing with. One, I don't think that on the small side of small business, except for a few very specific industries that print money, I don't think they can afford to be truly, secure. I believe we can take a lot of steps in the right direction, but I believe things like a business continuity plan is a important piece, because you have to accept the fact that it's not going to be 100%. The second thing is that the way IT departments and us to some extent used to be able to lay down the iron fist and say, this is what you use, this is how you use it, X, Y, Z, ABC, that's how it goes, has really become a problem in recent years, where people are doing more stuff at home. They have the I don't want to be like BYOD acronyming here, but I ignored that when it first became a thing and they were trying to shove it down our throat. But it's more of a thing, not in the exact context that it was initially laid out in, but in the sense that it is a problem, because it brings this sort of sense of entitlement's the wrong word, because it's their equipment and they should be able to do what they want. It's their money is what I'm trying to say. But it makes our job a lot more difficult. So. Yeah. When we're trying to work around these things, and even from a support standpoint, a lot of the guys, a lot of one guy, two guys, three guys, even if you got 10 guys, can you really have your support staff sitting there ready to remotely help people on the spot every time for very small issues because you locked their system down so far? If they want to right click, you got to give them permission. I mean, like I'm being a little, but that's like that level of, we'll call it protection. Everything basically is blacklisted. You have to whitelist or you can't do it. I mean, people want to use Google. And if you whitelist only, for example, sure, you'll have a lot less problems, but they won't be able to search. They'll search and they won't go any further. They can't click any links.
Right.
So for us, it's all about the layered approach. I've said before, we use FortiGates for the front end. That does a whole bunch of things for us, all the scanning and everything. But again, if you're not paying attention to that or you're not locking that down, I mean, it only goes so far. And if you lock it down really hard, you're going to get pushback from certain types of clients. Then you got your endpoint protection on the computers, and you got user education. And user education is a big one, but you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So if the users want to learn more, they will, and if they don't, then they'll open those emails that they shouldn't open.
Now, what do you think about offering education, education opportunities, right? Like offering a workshop, like okay, you have 5.
All that stuff is great, but again, back to the same thing. If the clients don't want to, even if they're sitting in the room, if their brain is not there. It's like anything. Ever gone to a tech conference and looked around the room? Some people are, sitting there checking their email and stuff. So they could say they were at this, they should know, X, Y, Z, but, maybe they don't. So having things in place, accepting the fact that things are going to go wrong once in a while, and making sure you not just you, like you can't have this in your head. You have to have the conversation with the client. If something happens, here's what we do. Here's the plan. That way, no one's ever panicking. I mean, it's like, no, we talked about this. This is what we do, and whatever. All my big clients, none of them have had any of the, knock on wood, have had like the crypto wall, crypto locker. We've been very good and diligent, and we do lock them down to an extent. But again, there's only so far you can push it, and how much are you going to charge to, have that availability to help them,
And how much of the client has taken, ownership of that in terms of, you can offer, the education, you can offer this and that, but whoever the owner is, or whoever the people in management are, if they're not on board, you're not going to have any success. And I've got a couple of customers where, they want me to show them how to get around. They want to be locked down, but then they want to be able to open it up themselves.
Yep. Exactly.
So that they can get on and do their stuff. So it is that catch-22 that, you got to give them a little bit of rope, but you don't want them to hang themselves.
Hey, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and I want you guys to think about what are some of the base things that a business needs to have in place in order for you to even work with them if they already have stuff in place, or if you are setting them up for the first time. What are some of the things that we need to do? But let's go on with our second ad. We have our show today brought to you by Pulse Printing and Promotions. Get help with all your print and promotional needs. Business cards, postcards, stickers, mouse pads, fridge, and car magnets, shirts, pens, and so much more. You can see some of the most popular items online, and new items are being added all the time. If you need something that is not listed, just ask. Make sure you use the promo code Podnutz for 5% off every order. It never expires. You can also sign up for their newsletter to receive monthly specials. If you sign up for the newsletter now, you will be entered to win 500 business cards. Darren over at Pulse Printing and Promotions not only designed my business cards, and he printed them and got them to me fast. So I was very happy with what he had not only put together, but what I'd actually gotten in my hands when they actually arrived at the house. Go to pulseprintpromo.com and use the offer code Podnutz. We want to thank Pulse Printing and Promotions for sponsoring this episode of Podnutz. Okay, so going back to network security, starting a business off, what are some of the base things that we need to have in place to say, yes, we can work with you? Because obviously we can go from both ends of the spectrum. We can go to, like Chad was talking about, where we got them so locked down, but they've got to raise their hand to go to the bathroom. Or we've got it so loose that everybody can go and torrent whatever they want. There's two ends of the spectrum that obviously we got to be somewhere in the middle, but we need a base, a good foundation. Where do we start? What are some of the things that we need to have that you guys go, I will work with you if we have this, and this in place? Marvin, you were talking about, I want you to have A, B, C, and D in place. I would like E, F, G, and so on and so forth, but these are the 4 things that I absolutely need to have. And what would those be?
Well, for me, basically, my A, B, C, and D are really stuff like if we're in a network where I've got a server and we are able to do centralized management, then we're going to do all the basic stuff like everybody's got to have a unique ID to log in. They've got to have a unique password that they're not sharing around. We've got to have backup on the network, and whatever type of backup that is. I'm not as strict as the type of backup for most customers, but for some, yeah, I'm going to have a nice, Chad mentioned Datto backup for that sort of stuff. We've got to have some sort of centralized AV and malware protection. I'm not going to let customers just throw on, the free stuff and manage it themselves.
Because that works out so well. Yes,
it does. I mean, it's a moneymaker, but it's such a time suck.
Right.
For that. So those are the things that are absolute minimums. And then we've got levels of, Chad mentioned firewalls. We're going to put in a firewall where we've got gateway protection, intrusion protection, internet content filtering. And I'll sit down with the customer and we'll go through, okay, here are the categories that we can block. And I'll let them make the initial decision, except that I say, we're going to block porn.
There you go. Number one.
What if they're an adult video
How dare
company?
you, sir?
What if they're an adult video company? What do you do then, Marvin?
Then I'm gonna, basically move my office to their place. No, I don't have any of those. But basically, there's categories of porn. There are certain sites, at least in the Sonic walls that I use, where I can block adware as a category. I can block proxy anonymizers so that users can't just go in and try to do their own proxy around stuff. There's a whole level of stuff, but that's usually the basics that we have to start with. But when you get into stuff like HIPAA and FINRA, then there's a whole nother layer of minimums you have to have.
Right. And how many people, percentage-wise, would you say are following those HIPAA and FINRA compliance issues?
Well, most of my customers are following them about 50%.
Okay.
The 2 things I was going to give you as an example is I've got one customer that I'm dealing with actually this weekend where we're dealing with Dropbox as a server.
Oh.
Where a previous tech, because he didn't want to deal with their server and network them and stuff, he actually put Dropbox on everybody's computer. Everybody's using the same personal Dropbox account. And all of a sudden they're trying to figure out how their bandwidth is an issue, and how come if one person got infected at their house, how did it end up in their business?
Right.
I said,
wow.
Well, they're using Dropbox at home? Well, yeah. Well, then there you go. So just simply something like that the person didn't consider, the separation of home and work as part of their network protection. The second is a HIPAA situation. I do have one medical office where one of the management staff found her picture on another website, and it was basically a picture of a procedure that was being done. It was on her back, so from that particular picture you couldn't see her, but if you went through the rest of the pictures through that website, you could tell it was clearly her. And she's like, how did my picture get on this website? Turns out a previous employee had taken a bunch of pictures from their office, taken it to another place, and used that on a website. Luckily, the other site took her picture down, but the question she asked me is, well, what can I do legally to go after them? And I said, I don't think you want to do that. And she asked me why, and I said, because basically somebody's going to turn that around on you and say, well, how did an employee get to the point where they could copy a picture off your network and take it out without you knowing? And she said, well, is that going to be an issue? And I said, well, yeah, if you're supposed to be HIPAA compliant, employees aren't supposed to be able to do that. So you're going to open up yourself to a HIPAA audit, and you're going to find out how non-compliant you really are.
Gotcha.
And
wow, it's a great story, though. I mean,
because they didn't want to do all of the stuff.
Sure.
It took them a year to do secure email, but they didn't lock down anything. Anybody can basically walk in and copy anything that they want. After I told them one of the things we need to do is lock down your Wi-Fi, which they finally let me put in a private Wi-Fi and a public Wi-Fi. But they didn't lock down the stations. People can stick in USB drives wherever they want, and I said that can't be with HIPAA compliance. We need to use it. All right.
Yeah, we get pushback sometimes. Like you mentioned, secure passwords. The accounts I'm really big on, but I get a lot of pushback. Well, shipping is just 5 guys that just log in, and we don't really want that. We don't want them to have email. Just shipping. And I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of ways you can do things. Like using Office 365, Exchange in general, but Office 365 as an example. You could have John, Jim, Sally, and Muhammad all have email addresses, and you then make a shared mailbox called shipping, and it's not a distribution list. It's a real mailbox, costs nothing extra other than what the users cost. You can have all mail come in there, and they can reply from there. But when they do a reply, the sent item goes in their personal sent items.
Right.
So the pushback I get is that we want it in shipping's sent items, so we would rather have a shipping account. That kind of thing. I mean, we could go 10 ways to Sunday with licensing and all that, but like avoiding all that and just keeping it simple. Things we get pushback on are password policies. My draconian password policy, it isn't very, it doesn't have a lot of fans at the end user level. I don't know why.
Every 30 days?
Yeah, it's 45, but it's 8 characters, must have special characters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase,
Yeah.
Can't be the same as the last 12 passwords, that kind of thing. But if you push too hard, you'll have them just changing one number anyway.
Right.
And so basically my rule is this. I have to look at every customer uniquely. Although I'm huge on standards, everyone gets a FortiGate, for example. Sounds like everyone gets a Sonic Wall from Marvin. I don't think Marvin goes in there. You don't sell a Cyber Roam on Monday, a Sonic Wall on Tuesday, and a FortiGate on Wednesday, right?
Nope.
Watch guards every leap year. No, so it's FortiGate. That's what you get. We don't do integrated Wi-Fi if I can help it. So maybe 1 in 100 have integrated Wi-Fi. I'm hoping that number is going to continue to decline. We'll do FortiAP. The public-private Wi-Fi stuff, absolutely. But again, I have this conversation. You cannot give out the internal passcode. But at the end of the day, I'm giving them the passcode, and if they choose. So, but all I do is tell them, whoever joins this can steal all your company files, and then usually they don't give it out. They'll give out the guest one. On the guest one, we put even more restrictions. But that's kind of the entry to the network. Now, here's where things change. If the customer has no remote access to the network, no VPN access, or even with a VPN, but no ports, forwarded and poked through the firewall, then I'll let them get a little more lax with the password policy. Mainly because if you have physical access to the computer, you're going to remove the password anyway.
Right.
And if you can't the only way to get into it is to go up to the computer. So at that point, okay. I mean, it's not like I recommend that, but I won't push too hard on that. The same with the unique users. Like I said, I mean, there's always the exception somewhere, but generally, completely agree with that. Endpoint protection. We basically our managed antivirus stuff we use as part of our RMM tools. We have high-risk clients who I then do web filtering with as well, which is in addition to the content filtering that we do on the firewall level, we do additional content filtering for them on their desktop, because sometimes you just can't be too safe with some people. I almost think that, like, sometimes I wonder if they're trying. Like, are you trying? Like, are you just to see if it works? Like, can I run that executable, bill from the post office this time? Maybe this time. Content filtering, though, yeah. So, and I was joking about the porn thing, but we have had to remove the weapons because there's a weapons category.
Oh, yeah.
We had to remove that because of our defense contractor customers. They're like, no, we can't go to our supplier site. It says you blocked it.
Oops.
We did. Sorry, we'll change that. So there's a little bit of give and take there, but that's kind of the basic. And the issue we have up here is, I mean, it seems like the HIPAA's been down there has been a big thing, but up here there is not a lot of forced compliance. In other words, like, it's kind of optional on a lot of things. And the problem with that is, of course, making people, not want to be Home Depot and not want to be Target. And that's really what we've done, is even if it doesn't say you shouldn't have to have somebody fining you to make you want to keep your customers' information safe. That's. And so that's the sort of thing. If you're not even making a concerted effort, then, and we were talking about backups, every managed customer has a Dotto. There's no exceptions to that. You're not a managed client if you don't have a Dotto. We have a legacy file-based system that we use for it's like in our data center and everything, and we've been using it for years, probably 7 or 8 years now. I have a handful of clients on that. Those dental clients I mentioned, for example, are on that. But if you're a managed client, you have a Dotto. That's just it's not open for discussion. In fact, the one client we're doing that really crazy server for can't have offsite backups due to some compliance issues with them, so they have a Dotto onsite with a local only option, which you can do, and so we're doing offsite with something else. The offsites are basically for, like, the end of the world scenarios.
Gotcha. Very interesting. So you definitely had that base where you start with, but I think we're hearing that a lot of people are having to basically make changes in their policies, so to speak, so that they can work with certain customers. And again, you talked about, okay, so Datto, if they're a managed client, then they're going to have a Datto. So obviously you have a lot of clients that are probably not managed that you are working with, and they don't have a Datto because they're using whatever, maybe nothing at all, and that becomes a big pain. So going back to this story of this hospital, though, how do you explain to the client, here's your options. Pay thousands of dollars to get this information back, which most of them they didn't want to spend thousands of dollars in order to set it up correctly. How do you get them to that point where they go, hey, if you would have done this, we could have avoided this?
All you have to do is find an example, and we just have a new one with this hospital. You say, do you want to be these guys? When this happens, you have two choices. You can be dealing with terrorists, cyber terrorists, whatever you want to call them, who are holding your data ransom, or you can just have me restore everything really easily. And I give them an example of both. And it really helps to, the first time you sell something new, whether you were to start selling Dotto tomorrow or whether you were to start selling FortiGate tomorrow, whatever, Fortinets tomorrow, it's a lot harder. The first one's always a lot harder. Once you've got a bunch of them out there and you're like, we have this many devices, we have this much data we're backing up, we know our stuff, here's a list of client references, feel free to call them, and here's a story of something that happened somewhat recently. Let me tell you about what could have happened, and let me tell you what actually did happen. And if you still don't want to follow my advice, then you're not a client. And like I said, so when I say that if you're a managed client, that's what you get, I'm going under what a lot of people consider like a fully managed client. We do everything. We take care of it all. I have lots of clients actually that have Dottos, and we don't do anything else for. We deal with their IT department. Their IT department we have several municipalities, and I couldn't tell you a password to any of their servers. No idea. But we back up their stuff. We manage their backups. We help them with support. So we do that for some other companies. We have some companies where we get in where for whatever reason, they have other stuff going on. Maybe they have some other company they're working with. Maybe we can't touch their server because it's managed by whatever. But the endpoints are completely up in the air. Then we'll do like a hybrid approach. But again, for a fully managed client, yeah, there's a baseline, and yeah, sometimes you have to adjust a little bit. But I don't think there's not as much wiggle room as it might sound. I mean, once you've got the appliance, once you've got the servers, Once you've got this, that, the other thing, it's all standardized. We're talking little minor tweaks. You know, the password doesn't have to have a special character. Like that, I mean, like, yeah, it's a policy change, but it's a lot different than being like, yeah, you can use a consumer router in your business. Sure. I mean, that's,
or password for the password. Right?
Or password, or no password. No password. They'll just auto log in. Everything auto logs in, including your server. Just auto logs in as a domain admin. Everybody's a domain admin.
I think a lot of people are they don't want to use scare tactics. And sometimes we talk about sales and different things on the show. And nobody wants to use the scare tactic. But I don't look at those things as scare tactics anymore. I look at them as, listen, this could be you. Or if we do this and put this stuff in place, this could be you. You have the choice of which person you want to be now. I'm just giving you both sides of the story. I'm not using a scare tactic to get you to buy my service. I genuinely want you to be protected so you don't have to go through the pain and suffering down the road if and when this does happen.
Yep. Fear-mongering and scare tactics, I call it fear-mongering. That is literally telling them the boogeyman is living under their bed and that there's a hacker in a van across the street right now and they better hurry up. Right. Telling them the truth, this is what happens on a day-to-day basis, is not fear-mongering.
Exactly.
That's just being honest.
Yep.
And sometimes the truth hurts.
It does.
You know?
Especially if they don't heed the advice.
Hurts more than.
Oh, man.
That's the sad truth, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, the other thing is when you're trying to talk with them about it, because, you know, a lot of companies will look at that story of the hospital and they're like, oh, well, they just paid the ransom and they got their data back, so, you know, no harm, no foul. It's the stories that they don't hear of the, you know, police department that, you know, had to, you know, basically drop a whole bunch of cases because when they got hacked and they paid the ransom, they didn't get that information back. But the best thing that I've always done, and if it doesn't work, then it's probably not going to be a relationship that I have where, you know, we sit down with them, we figure out what does it cost for you to run your business, and break that down by hour. How much does it pay? You know, how much does it cost for you to have employees sitting around the office not able to work? And for one of my law firms, you know, we found out that it was costing them, you know, $10,000 an hour. You know, between what they're paying their employees to not work and the lost billable time that those employees could be billing. And that's when he realized, oh, okay, well then in that case I don't want to lose that money, so do whatever you got to do to make sure we're able, you know, to be up and running all the time. Doesn't work for every customer, because for some customers, you know, they're like, well, we can go a day, we can survive a day, or I can survive a week. Right. And stuff like that. So you've got to weigh that out, customer by customer.
When you're talking about the ransomware, though, the payments, I tell them it's like this. They just kidnapped your kid. They told you to drop a bag of money at a phone booth. If you drop the money off, the kid will be delivered safely to the park. Is the kid going to be there? Maybe. Maybe not. They're definitely going to take the money, though. So it's up to you. And if you don't want to be in that situation, then here's what we do. And if you want to take your chances, okay, but just understand that's your chances. No guarantees.
Well, and I think it brings to light, too, a lot of people will, because there's a lot of companies, okay, so there's a lot of businesses out there that people are supporting, and they say, okay, here's the things I'd like you to have in place. They don't have those things in place. Their network's not as secure as it could be. But, boy, I'm telling you, as soon as the server goes down, they're like, it could be Sunday at 2 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't matter. And that IT company is on the spot, and they're like, oh, this is an emergency. And at that point, here's what I say. I told you, we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. And this is just what you have to go through. We'll get it back, or we'll do whatever we got to do to make it right, but it is no longer an emergency to me. Now, unless you want to pay my emergency rate, then
of course
everything can be an emergency.
Oh, it have to be emergency rates if it's like that. But even with the emergency rates, you just if there's two different problems you described there. The one problem is them wanting it done right away, and in that case, you pay the emergency rates, which is for us is 2 times normal rate.
Right.
Okay, whatever. Yep. The other thing that is okay, how much of a priority is it, or why did this happen? is a more likely thing you're going to get, then you forward them the email where you stated, because you can't, this can't be just verbal handshake stuff. I mean,
Right.
even if you have a verbal conversation, you need to follow it up with an email and outline what you talked about and say, we talked about this. This is what we recommended. This is what you decided to go with. Not a problem, but here is the not the downside, but here is like the result. Here is what you can expect, and then lay it out. And then if there's a problem in the future, you just send them their expectations that you already outlined in the past. Be like, nothing's changed, and doesn't mean they're gonna be happy about it, but you didn't make the decision.
Exactly, and that's really what it comes down to. So I just want to, and that's why I wanted to get you guys on here and talk about some of the bases, some of the foundations that you start with and go, okay, we can make these changes here and there, and we can, depending on what the customer needs, we can adjust that. But also, we're not sitting there bending over backwards when they're not following what we're telling them to best protect them. And it's not just about. That's what I try to really stress to people. It's not just about making a dollar bill. It's not just about making money. It is really about protecting the customer. I believe that's what most of us have gotten in this business to do. Yeah, obviously, we definitely want to make money, and so we can have a living. But at the same time, we really want to protect that customer. No different than. Really, I think a lot of people that get into whatever the medical field, veterinarians, whatever, a lot of those people really want to help whomever they're helping in their business. And yes, they make money, and that's okay. But yeah, it's just a different mindset. I don't think a lot of people in this industry put themselves in that position that we're actually trying to help the customer, but we're not working for a minimum wage rate.
Let's turn this around. Turn it around for a second, Jeff. When we're approaching our clients, are we telling them to do things that we don't do ourselves?
That's a good one.
Do you walk around with an unencrypted? And I don't mean you, but like, do you walk around with an unencrypted laptop and not care about the fact that you have customer data on it? Do you not have two-factor authentication on everything? Do you not have this firewall that you tell everyone they should have? Do you not have that at your office? If you're telling everyone to have a Dotto, do you have a Dotto?
Right.
Do you that's an Alto. That's an Alto. Actually, I'm running a virtual Alto right now for testing, but I also have a Sears Professional 1000 in the office that I usually do for my demos. But yeah, 40, same thing. So 48, I have a 100D firewall in the office. I got the Auto. All laptops are encrypted we currently use BitLocker, although we're thinking about switching over to the Sophos thing. If anyone has a recommendation on that, by all means, let me know what you think. Soliciting some of that. And the list goes on. I mean, the password policies that I say are draconian. We follow those, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So you have to, if you don't, if you're walking in there with an Acer Aspire laptop or an HP Pavilion with Windows Home on it, and you don't even have a domain at your office, and you're like, internet, I use my neighbors. I cracked this password, and I just use my neighbors, and I don't have to pay for it. And backups, I have a Dropbox server. Runs on my laptop.
Dropbox is a server.
I don't even need a server. I have it on my laptop. I have a Dropbox server running on my laptop. If that's your if that's your you're gonna have a harder time making the argument that me and Marvin are talking about.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
In the U.S., it's what we call eating your own dog food.
Absolutely.
There's many different scenarios for that, but
exactly.
No, that's a great point. And really, take that opportunity, because and here's my advice, is if you're going to sell something, and I agree with what Chad's saying here, is that you want to, whatever you're going to sell, go ahead and use that yourself. Number one, it gives you training on how it works, so you're not going in blind. Number two, it helps you know exactly what it's doing. So again, you're able to explain it to the customer, and it makes more sense because obviously you're using it and it works for you. If you're just going in and go, hey, you need the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it's this. I don't know exactly how it works, but we're going to set it up for you. It doesn't work, So.
And on the note of standardizing with your vendors, even if you're small, if you say to your rep, look, I only use your product, whatever product that is. I don't use any other ones. I'm trying to grow, but you've got me 100%. They're going to treat you a lot better than if you're using the flavor of the week.
Absolutely.
Sure, they'll give the new kid an ice cream cone, but then that's it. Like that's a one-time. It's a one-time.
Once it drops on the ground, you're done.
You're done.
There you go. All right. Well, I think we've covered a bunch of good information on network security and kind of a basis to start from, and hopefully that gives you guys out there something to think about, and hopefully you can, grow from this experience and, move your businesses forward. And even if you've been in this for a while and you're kind of doing things where you're kind of doing the haphazard, a little bit here, a little bit there, maybe you can, get some ideas from this and make your business that much better and help it grow. I'll tell you what, Chad, I appreciate you coming out, and you always share the goods because you've always got great, colorful stories. If you could tell people where they could find you at, that would be great.
Yeah, you can check out our company website. It's fastcomputers.ca, or just hit me up on Twitter. It's @ChadKempt.
All right, awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming out on the show. And
Thanks,
Mr. Marvin Bee, if people wanted to find you, where would they find you?
Find me at maninthevan.net, and I actually just realized I have a Twitter.
What?
Which you don't use, obviously.
You found it?
Actually, I have two, actually. I have a personal and a business, and no, I don't use them.
So it doesn't matter. Look them up on Twitter. You might be able to find them. All right. Thank you for coming out and sharing with us, Marvin, again. Great insights on a lot of good things. And Mr. Chris, no video Carruthers, where can people find you at?
Is that my new tagline? I am Chris, as you all heard, from Remote Support Tech Team. We're a white label IT company. If you want to learn more about us, you can go to our website, www.rstechteam.com. You can give us a call, 866-568-2813, or you can send us an email at info@rstechteam.com.
Yeah, and if you guys need that white label support to kind of help you out, you're not ready to hire an employee, go ahead and give Chris a call. He will talk to you and see if you guys will be a good fit. So definitely check that out. The consultation is free, correct, Chris?
Yeah, oh yeah. Every consultation's free, but as soon as I start working, that's when the money starts going.
There you go. No problem with that. So yeah, definitely check that out and bend his ear a little bit, and you can see if that's going to work for you. All right. Well, you guys, you can basically mark your calendars. We're going to say this again, is we have the Toronto On-Convention coming up July 22nd through the 24th in, yes, Toronto, Canada. I tried to get it in the U.S., but, Corey wanted to do it in Toronto, so no. We're going to go up and see our Canadian brothers and sisters up there. But, yeah, July 22nd through the 24th, 2016. If you guys would do us a favor and go fill out the On-Convention 2016 survey, we'll have a link in the show notes, and it's over at technibble.com. Come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/Computer Repair Podcast Live. Join in on the conversation by calling in live and hanging out in the chat room. We have audio available over at podnutz.com or subscribe using your favorite podcatcher. You guys can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Computer Repair Podcast. Send your questions and feedback to podnutz@podnutz.com. Or you can leave a voicemail at 1-888-697-0162, and we'll play that right along with our smiling voices on the show. And I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters who really appreciate what you guys are doing out there. You guys can support this show by going to patreon.com/Computer Repair Podcast. And I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast.
Woo!
Good show. We are still on air for those that don't know.
I'm still dancing. Give me a second.
Yeah, we can't see you though. It's not as funny when we can't see you.
I'm sorry. Next week.
Yeah,
I'll have it all set.
Looks like me being an idiot. Is what it looks like.
Oh, that's not true.
Excellent.
Did you move even farther north or something, Chris? Like that internet there, you can't even do video feeds anymore?
Yeah.
Getting
Yeah.
worse.
So what it is where my office is an add-on to the house. So the wall between the where the router is and the office is an outer wall.
Okay.
And so it's an older building, so there's enough interference there that it's actually causing the Wi-Fi to cut out. So part of setting up the new office space is going to involve, running some Ethernet cables and getting it all hooked up that way. But I have not had a chance to finish that yet.
Well, if it helps you, I'll tell my tech to stay home, and you can sit at his tech bench. You can work with our 100 by 100 symmetrical fiber and great Wi-Fi. All I ask is that any virus removals and new computer setups that come across the bench, you just kind of work on the nice 8-port KVM there. You can then just you know,
if you have some time,
yeah, if you have some time,
can just do a couple.
Just bring a VoIP phone. I got PoE on every port in the whole office. PoE Plus actually up to 30 watts, so you can just plug right in. And it's great if you need some. I mean, we got probably about 30 terabytes on the storage server in the back. If you need, some temporary work.
A little bit of spots.
I'm just telling you, like I can
saying.
Make it comfortable for you.
All I'm saying is that you're what, an hour-long drive each way?
Give or take. I mean, give or take-ish.
That's a typical commute, though.
I was gonna say, like, but you're actually driving that whole time. There's no parking.
Yeah, no, there's.
So, and once you get past Burlington, you can actually smell fresh air. You don't have to smell, city air anymore. Yeah. So. If by all means, just let me know. Like I said, I'll just tell him he's staying home.
There you go. Yeah.
And
it's making it sound great. This is sounding like an amazing opportunity.
I'm just telling you. Look, I try to help. I
know.
And I mean, when you're so hard up that you can't even push a video signal. I'm just saying, like, look, I feel like I could do better for you. You know what I mean?
I think what I think that's fantastic. I think that just ship me some fiber and that'll fix the
ship me
whole
some fiber.
Yeah.
Honestly,
you've got all this extra fiber all over the place.
The fiber. Well, see, the problem is it's all terminated already, though. Right?
Okay.
It's all terminated, and it's great though. Hey, look, you know what? When you want to ping Google, for example, it's about a 3-4 millisecond latency ping.
Woo!
I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to sell it too hard. I'm just saying.
You're just saying. Well, I'll tell you actually what's really nice is that the way that we have the cable line run now, because we had Rogers come out and run a second cable line outside from the other pedestal.
Yep.
And the actual cable line from the entry point to the coax port, I guess, or whatever, the outlet inside the home is 6 inches.
Okay.
So there's no internal cabling that I have to worry about anymore. But the problem is that when they put down the temporary line and they said, "Don't worry, we'll come back and bury it," that was before all the snow. So you can actually see the coax line running through my neighbor's trees with ice hanging off of it.
We've had to deal with that for a few clients. Yeah, and they're pretty merciless. Like if it's even like late October, they won't dig. They'll just tag it and say, "See you next year."
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll get
here too.
I pasted those ping. I just did a quick ping for the office internet. That's to google.ca. I thought you guys. Oh, look at 4 milliseconds. 3, and then 4. Ugh. It's like it's hard.
Yeah, that's rough. How will you ever survive?
I honestly don't know how I get through a day's work with that latency. I mean, anything over 2 milliseconds is just tough to live with, right? But no, it's I can see.
What am I looking at? What am I looking at?
From my house, it's only I get about 9 at home on cable. That's fiber at the office, though. It's funny, the cable around here is faster than the fiber, but it's not faster because it's.
No, see, mine's not bad. 33.
33, okay. I mean,
33. It's not horrible.
It's not horrible.
It's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. Yeah.
It is.
I mean, it's funny because 10 years ago, I do terrible things for that low latency.
Right. I'm under 100.
Yeah.
Yes.
No. It doesn't sound like a walkie-talkie on VoIP, really. But yeah, no. Does any of you guys have experience with doing cascading on a server? So basically, I've got a server right now, and the configuration is I got the OS array. We're going to ignore that. We're not going to talk about that. The host. Then we've got for the VMs. I've got 2 1 terabyte 7200 RPM SAS drives, and I got 2 240 gig SSDs. And what I originally was going to do is I was going to put the C drive for each of the 2 VMs I have to build on the 240 gig SSDs in RAID 1, and then I was going to put the data drives on the 1 terabyte. The formatted space, though, is about 226 gigs, and I feel like I'm just cutting it a little closer than I'm comfortable doing. So what I've currently got done, because I just did this morning, I've actually been doing this while we've been, that's what I got in the background here. I took the 2 1 terabytes, did a RAID 1 virtual group, and I got a very high-end RAID card in there. It's on the Lenovo, it's a 720iX with a 1 gig flash, like read-write cache, and it actually has supercapacitor. It's their highest end RAID card. It can hold up to 26 drives on the one card. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a dual core, like it's a good card. So on that card, basically what I've done is I've created a cachecade. This is normally like an extra license, but it's included with what I've got. And so you don't even see the 240 gig SSDs in RAID 1 anymore. They're part of the 1 terabyte array. You don't get extra space, but basically what it does is it puts the data there as needed. Now, the tests I found showed anywhere from like 140% to a 1500% performance improvement. My only concern is that I'm rolling this out, and I don't like rolling things out for the first time ever. I hate rolling things out for the first time. But this gives me a much better headroom, like more overhead as far as space, because then I've got the whole 1 terabyte there. I don't even need 1 terabyte. I could have done 500 gigs. Like they don't have a lot of data, maybe 150 gigs of user data, but their database, which is the killer, is about 30 gigs. But it's a SQL database, and they're going to be accessing it through RDS. And if I screw up on the deployment, I can fix it. I can migrate it off and then migrate it back with the Dotto. Like it's not the end of the world, but I'd rather not. So if anyone's got any experience on that, Marvin's probably the only one on here that might. Have you done anything with cachecading SSDs, Marvin?
No, and no, because I'm still rarely using SSDs, and I'm not using them in servers at all yet. So,
actually, here can we do a? I can do a screen share, right? Do you have to give me permission to do that, Jeff, or is that?
No, you should have permission to do that.
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna just open it so it's the only thing on my screen, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like if you want. There we go. Okay. Where is that? So.
Now you know we're still live. You don't mind showing that information?
No. There's nothing private on here. I'm literally setting it up from scratch, but I do appreciate you telling me that.
Okay.
No, because no. Like I said, no. I'm generally pretty aware of that.
Well, while you're doing that, Chad, I will say, Jeff, when we were talking about the Dropbox as a server issue that I was going to talk about today.
Yeah.
One of the things that I had to do for them this weekend was to figure out how the tech had mounted their network share as a local drive, and I had to remember that there's a DOS command for substitute that would mount a network folder as a local hard drive.
Oh.
It's been probably 15 years since I used that.
Wow.
And
so he knew enough to do that, but
yeah.
That was... Can you guys see that? I don't know if did it come up there.
It's there. It's okay. We'll have to maximize here.
It's probably pretty small. Sorry, I'm on one of those ultra wide monitors.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the glasses don't help either.
No, but it's
along with your network.
Yeah, my network here is not bad. It's 250 by 10. So basically, here's what we got. So if you look at virtual drive 0, that's the host array. We're just going to ignore that, okay? Then we go down to drive group 1 here, and what I've done with this is the 2 1 terabyte SAS drives. They're nearline SAS, so they're literally like 7200 RPM enterprise SATA drives basically, but they have a SAS interface, so they're a little better. And then down here is this cachecade group I created, and you can see here where it says associated virtual drives, virtual drive 2. So up here, virtual drive 2. It's literally set up for write back, which is, of course, the faster way. That's where you lose data if you don't have battery protection, but I do. And I have it in RAID 1, so even if one of the SSDs in the cache array die, I don't lose data. So far, it's not bad, but I mean, the only thing I've really got done is I've just been installing updates, which are taking forever. And even while I got to 2 VMs on here, I mean, I've been doing seat of the pants testing where, like, Explorer opens pretty quickly. Nothing really feels terrible. It all kind of feels okay. But that's terrible. That's not good testing. So,
well, here's the question, Chad, though. I mean, you said that your testing has shown you to have a percentage increase, but do you actually feel the percentage increase?
It wasn't my testing. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that. I basically found somebody that did some benchmarking, and they found with SQL databases they were getting 1,500%. Exchange was about 136%. So we really should feel it. I think where the limitation is going to be is when they're loading the stuff for the first time, it's not going to matter much, but then when they start pulling it in. So here's an example. I'm going to have about 10 to 15 users logging in through remote desktop services. And so, like, give or take, not all at the same time. It'll be a few here, a few there. When they log in, they're gonna hit the thing, and a lot of that data is going to be the same, right? Because those files that get accessed when a user logs in are the same for everybody. That's going to be really fast, but then when it loads their actual user data, which is just going to be their documents and whatever else, it's already on the server locally, so unless they go to open it, they're not going to feel a difference. So I'm fairly comfortable with this, but I would have really liked someone to say, oh yeah, I've set that up 50 times, and it's great, and I love it. So, like I said, worst case scenario, and since we're live, I mean, I will eat these words if I have to. What I will do is, if this doesn't work out, then after hours one night, I will shut down the 2 VMs, delete the E drive, which is basically this array here. I will turf both these arrays. I will create a new array out of this, and then I will create, well, basically this array without the caching, and then I'll put the VM C drives back on here because I've created the C drives small enough that I could do this if I needed to in the future for this exact reason. So the partitioning will still let me do that. But obviously, no one wants to sit there and copy data they don't have to copy. So,
Chad,
yeah.
So you're doing RDS. You're doing 2012 server R2.
You got it.
Are you doing the? Is that a physical RDS server, or are you doing?
No. So this server has 2 VMs running on it. VM1 is going to be Active Directory, File Server, and SQL. Server 2 is going to be just RDS and all the roles RDS needs.
And what have you allocated for RDS for each?
So for RDS, it's going to have, so the C drive's 120 gigs, the data drive's going to be probably a couple hundred gigs to start, which I can easily expand if I need to.
And the RAM?
And the RAM is going to be 32 gigs.
And you said a max of 15, but really only, what, 5 at a time?
Yeah, honestly, their upstream is 768 kilobits, so they're going to have bigger problems if I have 15 users logging in at the same time than their RAM. To be completely honest with you.
So you could have done all this for nothing.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So I had basically, with this client, there was 3 options. Option 1, I put them totally in the cloud. Their one office has 14 users, and then they have 14 more users spread across 5 or 6 more offices. The main office where the 14 users are is where the server is going to physically sit. So if I would have put this on a cloud server like Azure or AWS or even my own stuff, then they would have had 14 users at the main office going out over that connection. So really, having the branch offices, where some of those branch offices are only open a couple days a week, having them remote in is the more sane solution, because the big office where most of the action happens is going to be local to the server, and they're not using RDS. They're just going to be using.
Oh, the local users are not using RDS.
No, sorry. There's 28 users. The local ones are not going to use RDS. RDS is for anybody, because the ones not in the office aren't on the domain. They do not have a proper, VPN between all the offices, and so basically the most secure thing I came up with was using RDS.
All right, so then basically it's going to depend on the connection on the other side, wherever they're using from their office or their home or wherever they.
And the other offices, like they're mostly hospitals and stuff, they won't have a problem. It's going to be the 768 up is going to be the biggest issue. Right. To alleviate that, though, I mean, I could always put in a secondary connection or switch them to something. The area they're in, they don't really have a lot of cost-effective options, but they do have options. Like I could put an LTE card in there or something, but I mean they're a nonprofit and it'll raise their costs by about 5 times. So I don't really want to do that. But I think this will work because, I mean, they're currently using a remote app like RDS from everybody in the office. And they say it's horrible and slow, but those are the important people. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the important people on the fast connection, and everybody else is just going to have to deal with it. The RAM, though, the server has 64 gigs of RAM. So I'm going to see what if we're only using SQL Express, which I think we're going to start with SQL Express. They qualify for TechSoup, but I was just still trying to eliminate extra costs, so I didn't make them buy SQL Standard. The database, they told me the line of business vendor told me their database, their biggest client, and my client's nowhere near this big, is 30 gigs. So I'm expecting the database to be a couple gigs at most. I think SQL Express, we probably won't hit a bottleneck. I'll run the latest version, 2014 probably. And basically I can steal RAM from that VM, because Active Directory, SQL Express, and a file server don't need the other 32 gigs of RAM. Obviously I have to leave some for the host, so it's probably going to be more like 28 gigs, rest on the host, and then I'll just steal from the first VM to the other if I'm seeing performance issues. But the biggest thing I'm concerned about is, like I said, I've just never done a deployment where I did this. I've done deployments where I had SSD caching, but there was a lot more drives on the main part of the array. This is RAID 1. I mean, I normally would not deploy one VM, let alone two VMs on one RAID 1 array. Just
Yeah, but I mean, but for the amount of users and what you're talking about, I don't know that that's going to be.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a major issue either.
Yeah.
I think we're probably okay. And even the processor on this server, it's not bad. It's a 2620 V3, which is I think it's 6 core. Yeah. So yeah, there you can see the server specs there. And the server's got 2 NICs plus the management ports. So what I'm going to do is all the VM traffic's going to go over the one NIC. And like I said, I don't think any of that's going to be a problem though. But one thing I'm going to do differently is I was originally going to set up a new network, like a new a domain controller for this, new Active Directory, rather. Their old one's SBS 2003, and it's like not using Exchange, and it's really busted. But I think it's going to be faster with that many users to just join it and clean it up a little bit. I don't know. Where's your cutoff, Marvin? I usually cut off at 5 users. If it's more than 5, I migrate. If it's 5 or less, we just create a new domain.
For customers that I'm just inheriting or whatever, I just do the typical. I mean, I do 5 if it's a client that I know has to use a line of business software that requires a server. Otherwise, for some customers where all they're doing is Office 365, Word docs, or whatever, I'll go up to 9.
To 9, okay. Because I honestly would rather have a fresh domain, because then I can use a domain functional level of like at least 2012 or even 2008. 2008 R2.
I would get them off the 2003 regardless. I mean, just.
Oh, the 2003 is leaving. It's leaving. It's just that the problem is because it's SBS, it's going to move over all those attributes for like Exchange and everything like that, and it's just going to make a mess.
Yeah, just do it clean. Even 2012 Essentials. I mean, you could probably.
Oh no, it's real stuff. That's what you saw there is what we're using. There are 2 standard.
Okay. Yeah.
One
standard.
host, 2 VMs. Yeah, standard 2.
Okay, sweet.
But their old one is SBS 2003, and my decision has to be: do I connect this to the 2003 domain, migrate all the the SML roles, or do I clean cut over?
No,
if I clean cut over, I got 14 desktops I got to deal with profile migration. If I join it up, then I can do like some behind-the-scenes wizardry on moving all the shares and everything like that.
No, just do Fab's auto backup. Come on.
That still involves somebody going around to all these computers. I got a busy month because I'm traveling. You guys, I'm going to be at the Dotto Roadshow in Halifax. Chris, if you want to come to Halifax, come out and see me in Halifax.
No.
You gonna pass on that one?
I think I'm gonna pass on going to Halifax. Yeah.
Halifax. And then I got more travel coming up later in April, and then the Nashville though in June. Is anybody going? Do you guys know anybody who is going? Because Steve Wozniak, that's gonna be great.
No, they're coming to Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, the unconvention's gonna be great too. I'm looking forward to that as well. That won't require quite as much travel for me. So. That'll be good.
Hey, I'm going to go ahead and stop the live feed, and we'll see you all next Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you then.